Alright, I've had enough, okay? I defended the Magic Mouse. I've got enough Apple sheep this week, so now I'm here to do a rant on a very specific type of Apple fanboy out there that I happen to disagree with, okay? And that's on the people that keep trying to defend the Lightning port. They all came out of nowhere, especially once the EU agreed to pass this law that's going to require a universal charging standard for smartphones. And I'm not here to talk about the rant of people that think it's wrong for a government to force a company to do that kind of thing. That gets very political very quickly. I'm here to argue on the technical level. I'm just talking about why Lightning needs to go. Its time is done. And we've been wanting USB-C on the iPhone for a long time, but then out of nowhere, all these people showed up that just want Lightning to stay. And I've seen so many of their arguments that I thought I would take the most common ones and just address them in an individual video so that y'all can shut up. Okay? Sounds great. Let's begin. Alright, so let's address some of the very common ones that I think are very easily disputable. For one, some people say USB-C won't work on the iPhone because it's too thick. It's bigger than Lightning physically, so that means we can't put it on the iPhone. Since the iPhone's so small and compact and everything, Lightning is the only port that could work because Lightning's just so dang small. First of all, the iPad Pro, it exists. It's 5.9 millimeters thin, which, by the way, is thinner than every iPhone that has ever existed, and it has USB-C. Also helps that it's made by Apple. So the thickness thing is not a problem. Not to mention, this is gonna sound weird today, but I'm gonna reference other Androids a lot, but lots of other Androids have had USB-C for years now, and they're not drastically thicker than the iPhone. In fact, some of them are much thinner than the iPhone, and you can still rock USB-C. So it's not an issue of thickness, and we know in more recent history, Apple has been making iPhones thicker and thicker and thicker, so I don't know what the argument is, assuming that Apple's trying to make iPhones super thin, and USB-C will prohibit them from making them that thin. I mean, if Apple decided to make an iPhone as thin as the iPad Pro, we would have Bendgate 2.0 or 3.0 by now, and I don't think they're interested in that, okay? We all want bigger battery lives, we don't really care that much about the thickness anymore, so no, USB-C is not too thick to go on the iPhone. Shut up. The other stupid one I keep seeing is Lightning is much more durable than USB-C because USB-C is kind of a port within a port. So when I say that, I'm referring to, inside a USB-C port, you can see that little pin. And when you look at the actual cable of USB-C, you don't actually see any pins. That's because they're all internally based. So while you're holding the male end of USB-C, it's really just a hole that slides into that pin that's inside the USB-C port. And out of nowhere, these Lightning fanboys have decided that that's somehow a design flaw, and that makes the port much more fragile and less water resistant. There is literally no evidence to back this up. There have been no studies or no cases of that inside pin of USB-C ports breaking, and yet Lightning fanboys just seem to think that Lightning's more durable because it doesn't do that. When in actuality, USB-C is more reliable than Lightning. How many of you have old iPhones with Lightning ports and realized that over time, dust started building up inside that Lightning port, and then once you plug in Lightning, after a while, it just stops charging and you have to reverse it the other way or clean out that Lightning port because it collects too much dust? Not as often, it can happen, but USB-C has this much less frequently because you're not carrying the USB-C cable around in your pocket all the time. Because it's a port within a port, that usually means that your cable, which sits on your nightstand or at your desk or wherever you charge your phone, is not being tucked away in your pocket full of lint all the time. And since the hole on that USB-C cable is much smaller, it's much harder for dust to build up and collect in there compared to Lightning. This is why a lot of devices that use USB-C don't have this design flaw that Lightning often has to put up with, where because Lightning is a much more empty hole that's actually on the phone itself that you're stuffing into your pocket, lint and dust collects in there, and that's when the charge cable stops working and you have to clean it out. There's also people out there that have said Lightning is somehow better for water resistance. Not sure how they have that argument when Samsung's had water resistant phones much longer than Apple has, and they've had USB-C since the Galaxy S8. And I know iPhones are very water resistant now too, but we've had tons and tons of smartphones out there with USB-C and water resistance. It's not like you can't make a water resistant product with USB-C. Again, just pulling stuff out of thin air, making up arguments that have no logical sense, just, well, it's probably less water resistant. Is there any evidence to suggest that? Because there's tons of phones on the market with USB-C and water resistance. Nope, it's just worse. I don't know why it is, it's just worse. So again, stupid argument. Don't try to argue that Lightning's somehow more durable than USB-C. And also these other Androids have never had the issue of the internal pin breaking off. That's just not a common issue. That's not something that happens regularly. And I'm sure there's some type of rare Lightning issue that's even more common than that. Third point is a little less stupid, but I still think it's wrong, and that's that Apple just wants to remove the charge port pretty soon anyway, so why switch to USB-C if we're gonna switch to portless soon in like a year or two? Okay, not completely unreasonable. I can see why some people think that's gonna happen, but the reason I've changed my opinion on the portless iPhone is because of what Apple said to the EU, that removing the Lightning port would stifle innovation and end up causing lots of e-waste because now all of our Lightning accessories wouldn't work anymore. Well, making a portless phone would not encourage that theory. If Apple's main argument against switching to USB-C is that all of our Lightning accessories are no longer going to be compatible and that's a lot of e-waste, then switching to no port, not USB-C, not Lightning, and just doing everything wirelessly, that's like the most e-waste supportive theory possible. And if Apple wants to use that as a point towards them, they cannot be planning on removing the charge port permanently anytime soon. Not to mention iPhone sales, they're doing pretty well right now, and removing the charge port is going to be like removing the headphone jack times 10 for people. It's going to make everyone frustrated. It's going to make a bunch of average consumers feel like Apple's ripping them off and Apple's stupid, and that would mean Apple would have to ship wireless chargers with every single phone. Not to mention it would make all of the Lightning accessories we have useless, so again, that would contribute the most to e-waste, and if Apple's trying to combat that, removing the charge port is coming someday. It's just not going to be anytime soon. And my point is that there's going to be enough time between right now and the portless iPhone that we can switch to USB-C. Okay, I'm not saying they'll never make a portless iPhone. I just don't think it's coming next year. I don't think it's even coming the year after that. I think there's going to be plenty of years of iPhones with charge ports, and might as well use one that Apple's already shipping on lots of their devices. That's another one people bring up, is that, oh, now we would have to use more adapters and that would contribute to more e-waste. But I think what people are forgetting is that this switch to USB-C is not at all the same thing as switching from 30-pin to Lightning. When Apple introduced Lightning on the iPhone 5, that was the only product that had it. There was nothing else on the market. No one had even heard of Lightning yet, and over time they've switched lots and lots of their devices over to Lightning because it was better than 30-pin, I agree, but it wasn't like they were already embracing Lightning on other product lines for years and years. So when I hear people say that, well, you know, they use 30-pin for 10 years, they want to use Lightning for 10 years, the issue with that comparison is Apple's been shipping USB-C with their products for 5 years now. The first Apple designed product with a USB-C port was the 2015 MacBook, and at the time they unveiled that, almost no one knew what USB-C was. It was kind of a thing, but definitely wasn't that mainstream as it is today. But Apple did help Intel develop it. They were not completely outside of that design process. When they were helping design USB-C, they made something that could do display output, that could do data output, audio output, power, and we didn't have that back when Lightning was coming out, okay? There wasn't really a way to combine all ports into one shape, but now there is. And that's my point, is that they've been embracing USB-C on the MacBook line for years and years and years now, and within the past 2 years, they've even been embracing it on the iPad lineup. So adding it to the iPhone is not like introducing a brand new proprietary connector, especially given competitors are using it so much now. Apple's even using it themselves. They helped develop it. So this whole argument of, well, we don't want to force Apple to use USB-C because what if they want to change the port? What if they want to make a new kind of port and make something better than Lightning? Well, they already did that. They did it with USB-C, and very smartly, they decided to work with a series of companies on it instead of just developing it all by themselves, then have no one else be able to use it without a royalty, which results in more e-waste because no one wants to all adapt to Lightning. That's not going to work, so it makes way more sense that when USB-C came time to develop, Apple worked on something that everybody can use. That's the idea. Someday we'll get rid of as many ports and wires as possible once we can do everything over the air, but until that day, it's going to make life in the transition period much, much easier if we just have one port, one cable for everything. It's not a matter of what type of cable is it. And I know people complain, well, there's so many different kinds of USB-C. USB-C is so confusing. Well, yeah, there are lots of different kinds of it, but that's what happens when you try to replace every single port with the same shape. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea, though, because you're still at least working in the same shape. So maybe there's a certain cable or there's a certain device that isn't compatible with another cable or port that is USB-C, but at least you won't have to go out and buy an adapter because you have the right cables, you just don't have the right shape. If we can get everybody to agree on one shape for everything, then the cable part can come later. But no, if you're trying to replace replace all the ports with one, you're not going to get the same type of port on every single device, because your iPhone that charges overnight does not need Thunderbolt 3, it does not need USB 4, it just needs a simple USB-C connector, which, by the way, can transfer data a lot faster than Lightning can, because it is newer and it's more well-built, and of course can support much higher charge rates than Lightning can. So in the future, if they want to start shipping faster chargers with the iPhone, I mean, they already made that move last year, they have a lot more room to breathe with USB-C than they do Lightning. So my final conclusion to everyone is that they've embraced it on the iPad Pro, and every single reason they gave for adding USB-C to the iPad Pro, you can apply the exact same logic to the iPhone, okay? Because there wasn't anything you could do with the iPad Pro in USB-C that you couldn't do with iPad and Lightning. You could find adapters, you could plug in hard drives, they had SD card adapters, they had all kinds of Lightning dongles out there that allowed you to plug in other stuff to the iPad, and that's why you have like iPad OS on Lightning iPads right now. But the whole reason they switched to USB-C was compatibility. They knew a lot of people who were using their iPad were working with accessories that were already USB-C, just like the MacBook, because so many people are switching over from that. So for the sake of simplicity, you could apply every single logical reason of just most people having USB-C cables and accessories already to the iPhone. All that same logic applies, and as much as I hated doing the Pixel 3 XL challenge last year, I gotta admit, on my honeymoon, it was very, very convenient that my iPad Pro, my MacBook, and my Pixel all charged with the same cable. I just had to pack one charger, and I don't have that situation with the iPhone. And this video is getting too long, but I already know there's lots of other accessories in Apple's ecosystem that support Lightning, but in my opinion, there should be one swift motion where overnight they just update everything. If you're worried that your old cables aren't going to work and the average consumer doesn't want to change ports, just remember, if the iPhone had USB-C, it would ship with a USB-C cable, which is what most people are charging their phone with anyway, the charger it's shipped with. So they wouldn't have to change that much, and it's not like it's a brand new port because we have USB-C cables for so many things already. So can this stupid argument of why Lightning needs to stay just stop? Of course, there's going to be some of you that just say, but I like Lightning. So I don't care about anything you just said because I like it. Dang! That's a really compelling counter argument. Good idea. Anyway, feel free to send your bitterness to my Twitter or my Discord. We can talk more about this there. Just please don't bring up any of the arguments I destroyed in today's video, because you're wrong. This is your App Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.